The night was too quiet for Manhattan. Inside the marble-floored mansion, the silence cracked under the sound of a woman's sobs. Liana Moore, 6 months pregnant, pressed her back against the cold wall, one trembling hand over her swollen belly. Her husband, Victor Hale, stood before her. Eyes wild, tie loosened, rage dripping from every breath. "Sign it," he shouted, slamming a thick folder onto the glass table. "Sign it, or you'll regret this." Liana shook her head weakly, tears blurring her vision. "It's my father's legacy, Victor. I can't give it away." Her voice trembled like fragile glass. The contract in front of her bore the Hale Industries logo, a company her late father built from nothing. Victor wanted it all, every share, every dollar. Behind him, a young woman in a crimson silk dress leaned lazily against the wall. Clara Dunn, Victor's assistant, his secret mistress. Her lips curved into a cruel smile. "She's being dramatic, Victor. She'll sign eventually. Pregnant women always do when you press hard enough." Victor's jaw clenched. He turned, stepping closer to Liana until his shadow swallowed her whole. "You think being pregnant makes you untouchable?" His voice dropped to a venomous whisper. "You owe me everything. Without me, you're nothing." Liana's body shook. She backed away, one hand clutching her belly. "Please, Victor," she pleaded softly, voice breaking. "Don't do this, my baby." The sound came first. The sharp crack of a shoe against flesh. Liana gasped, pain slicing through her abdomen as she fell to her knees. Her hand slipped against the marble, leaving a smear of red. "Please don't kick me. My baby could die," she sobbed, trying to crawl away. Clara laughed under her breath. "She's pathetic," she murmured, sipping from her wine glass. Victor towered over his wife, panting. "Sign the papers, or I swear." He didn't finish. Somewhere in the ceiling, a faint red light blinked. A hidden camera, one Liana's father had installed years ago for security. It recorded everything, the scream, the kick, the blood. Liana's vision blurred. The world dimmed into shadows. As she collapsed, one thought echoed through her fading mind. "If I die, he wins." Outside, thunder rolled across the city skyline, but inside that mansion, the storm had already begun. And somewhere, deep in a Hale Industries server room, a silent camera uploaded its footage to the cloud, setting in motion a revenge that would shake the empire to its core. 3 years earlier, that same mansion smelled of roses and laughter. Liana Moore had been radiant, twirling barefoot through the living room as Victor Hale spun her around, both of them glowing in the golden afternoon light. Back then, she believed she had everything: a husband who adored her, a marriage built on trust, and a future bursting with possibility. Victor had seemed like every woman's dream. Tall, charming, magnetic. The kind of man who commanded attention the moment he entered a room. He said all the right things about destiny, loyalty, and how he wanted to build a legacy with her. Liana, still mourning her father's passing, had found comfort in his strength. She thought he was her protector. What she didn't see was the hunger behind his smile. In the beginning, Victor was gentle. He'd leave handwritten notes by her bedside, whispering about how proud her father would be. "You'll see, darling," he used to say, brushing her hair behind her ear. "Your father's company will thrive again with us." And she believed him. She gave him access to her trust fund, her father's archives, and the documents tied to the Hale Industries shares her father had built decades earlier with his 3 closest friends, the Hale brothers. But slowly, love turned into possession. Victor's tone hardened. He began monitoring her phone calls, controlling her finances, deciding what she wore to events. The sweet laughter faded into silence. He wanted power, and she was the key. The first time he raised his voice, it was over a minor argument about money. The first time he threw a glass, it shattered inches from her face. But afterward he cried. He always cried. "I'm under pressure, Liana," he said, gripping her hand too tight. "You don't understand what it's like being me. I just need you to trust me." She did. Again and again, until the day she found lipstick on his collar. Not hers, but crimson red, the same color Clara Dunn would later wear. When she confronted him, he smiled coldly. "You're imagining things. Maybe it's the hormones." That was the moment Liana realized she was losing herself, piece by piece. She had married a stranger wearing her husband's face. Months later, when she discovered she was pregnant, she hoped it might bring him back. For a brief time it did. Victor kissed her stomach, promised the baby would have everything money could buy. But even as he spoke, his phone buzzed. She caught a glimpse of a text. "She signed yet?" from Clara. That night, Liana sat in her late father's study, tracing her fingers along the mahogany desk. Inside one drawer, hidden beneath an old photograph, she found a letter in her father's handwriting. "My dearest Liana, if you ever feel unsafe, trust the Hale brothers. They were my blood and business. And remember, power can destroy, but it can also protect. The company's legacy is yours. Guard it well." Her hands trembled as she folded the letter. She didn't understand its meaning then, but she soon would. The next morning, Victor brought her breakfast in bed. Eggs, toast, orange juice. He kissed her forehead, eyes hollow. "You'll sign the merger next week, right, darling?" Something in her chest twisted. The man she'd once loved now looked at her not as a wife, not even as a person, but as a signature waiting to happen. Still, she smiled, nodding gently. "Of course, Victor." But inside, she made a silent vow. "If you ever hurt me again, I'll make sure you regret it." And somewhere in the shadows of Hale Industries, three powerful men, Gabriel, Julian, and Ethan Hale, were already watching the storm build. The penthouse on Fifth Avenue was the kind of place most people only saw in magazines. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over the glittering Manhattan skyline. Marble floors reflected chandeliers worth more than a family home, and every surface gleamed like it had been polished by angels. To the world, Victor and Liana Hale were the picture of success, the golden couple of New York's elite. But behind the glass walls, the air was colder than stone. Liana lived in a mansion that no longer felt like home. Her pregnancy should have been a time of joy, but instead every morning began with silence and ended with fear. Victor's voice echoed through the halls like a warning bell. "Where are you going? Who were you on the phone with? Why isn't Clara's proposal printed yet?" The questions were endless, the accusations sharp. She had once loved his confidence. Now it was a weapon. He controlled everything. The credit cards, the staff, even the color of her dresses. The housekeepers no longer met her eyes. The driver who used to greet her warmly now only nodded and looked away. They had learned, as she had, that defiance had a cost. At night, Liana often wandered the nursery Victor had designed, a pristine white room with designer toys and a crib imported from Italy. It looked perfect, sterile, untouched. She would trace her fingers over the little blue blanket embroidered with her unborn son's name, Noah, and whisper, "I'll protect you, I promise." But the fear in her chest never left. Victor's mistress, Clara Dunn, had become a constant presence under the guise of business support. She floated through the house in expensive perfume and smug smiles, always finding reasons to brush past Victor, always throwing Liana a pitying glance. "You really shouldn't stress so much, Liana," Clara once said, her tone dripping with mock sympathy. "It's bad for the baby. Maybe you should rest more and let Victor handle things." That night, Liana locked herself in the bathroom and cried until she couldn't breathe. She remembered her father's words. Power can destroy, but it can also protect. She began to suspect there was more to her inheritance than Victor knew. Maybe that was why he was so desperate. Days blurred into weeks. The isolation was suffocating. Victor's temper grew worse, his drinking heavier. When he wasn't working, he was barking orders or whispering to Clara behind closed doors. Liana once overheard him through the crack of the study door. "She'll sign it soon. If not, we'll make her." The words chilled her blood. That night, she called her old friend, Lauren, whispering from the walk-in closet where Victor's voice couldn't reach. "If anything happens to me," she said, "check my father's office. There's something there. Something important." She didn't know it, but the Hale brothers, Gabriel, Julian, and Ethan, had already begun investigating Victor's dealings. Her father's will had been unusual, granting the brothers partial oversight of her shares until she turned 30. When Hale Industries' internal auditors noticed missing funds, the brothers traced the trail straight to Victor Hale. But before they could act, tragedy struck. It was a freezing December night when Victor came home drunk, furious over a stalled merger. Clara followed, pretending concern, but fanning his anger with every whispered word. Liana was in the nursery, humming softly to the baby when he stormed in, waving documents. "You'll sign tonight," he shouted. "I'm done waiting." Her heart raced. "Victor, please, not now." His hand slammed against the wall beside her head. "You'll do as I say." and as thunder rolled across the Manhattan skyline, the mansion once built on love became her prison. What neither of them knew was that a single blinking light above the nursery door, an old security camera, was watching everything. The night began with candlelight. It ended with blood. Liana had spent the afternoon trying to stay calm. The baby moved restlessly inside her, tiny kicks that reminded her she wasn't alone. She tried to eat, but every sound in the mansion made her flinch. When Victor called from his car saying, "We need to talk tonight," her stomach knotted with dread. He always said that before something terrible. By the time he arrived, it was almost midnight. His tie was loosened, his eyes glassy with liquor and fury. Clara trailed behind him in a silk coat, pretending to be worried but smirking at the corners of her mouth. "Maybe this isn't the time," Clara murmured. "She looks emotional." "Shut up," Victor barked, tossing his coat at the couch. His voice carried the chill of a storm. "You've stalled long enough, Liana. Sign the damn transfer." The folder hit the coffee table with a thud. The logo of Hale Industries gleamed beneath the chandelier. Liana's heart pounded. "You can't take what my father left me," she said softly. "He trusted me with it." Victor's laugh was low, dangerous. "Your father trusted the wrong man. You wouldn't even have this company if it weren't for me. I built your reputation. I made you respectable." He stepped closer, the smell of whiskey sharp in the air. "You'll sign tonight, or I'll make sure you regret it." "Regret it?" she whispered. "What could you possibly do that you haven't already?" That question was gasoline to his temper. Victor's hand shot out, grabbing her wrist. "You're not going to ruin me, you ungrateful." He shoved her backward, and she stumbled against the edge of the glass table. Pain tore through her side. "Victor, please, stop," she gasped, clutching her belly. "You'll hurt the baby." Clara stood motionless, a cruel observer in designer heels. "Victor," she said lazily, "this is getting ugly. Maybe you should scare her just enough to make her sign." Something snapped inside him. "You think I won't?" he snarled. He grabbed Liana by the arm, shaking her. "You'll do what I say. You're nothing without me." Her voice broke. "Please don't kick me. My baby could die." The words came out like a prayer, but Victor's rage drowned them out. He shoved her again, harder this time. She fell to the marble floor, pain exploding in her abdomen. Blood bloomed beneath her trembling hands. "Victor," Clara gasped, stepping back. "You're insane." But he was past reason. "She'll sign," he muttered, pacing. "She just needs to learn her place." Liana tried to crawl away, her vision swimming. The baby? God, please, not the baby. Her hand smeared red across the white marble as she reached for the phone on the counter, but it slipped from her grasp. From somewhere above, a faint click echoed, the security system reactivating after a power surge. A small red light blinked in the corner of the room. Liana's voice was barely a whisper. "Help me." Victor froze, suddenly aware of the crimson spreading beneath her. Clara's face drained of color. "We have to call someone," she said, voice trembling. But Victor only shook his head. No hospitals, no police, not a word. He grabbed a towel and pressed it against Liana's side, panic flickering across his face. "You'll be fine," he muttered, more to himself than to her. Then her body went limp. Her head rolled to the side, eyes half open, breath shallow. "Victor," Clara whispered, horrified, "you killed her." For the first time that night, silence filled the room, heavy, suffocating, final. And above them, the hidden camera recorded every second. The sound of the fall still echoed through the marble halls. Then nothing. Just the faint hum of the air conditioning and the shallow, uneven breaths of a woman fighting to stay alive. Victor stared down at Liana's body, his pulse thundering in his ears. "She's breathing," he muttered, voice shaking. "She's fine. She just fell." Clara stood frozen by the doorway, her red lipstick trembling against pale skin. "Victor, there's blood everywhere." Her voice cracked. "You kicked her, for God's sake." "Don't say that," he hissed, turning on her with wild eyes. "No one needs to know what happened here. If anyone finds out, it's over for me, for us." Clara's eyes darted toward the pool of blood spreading across the floor. "Over for you, maybe," she whispered. "Not for me." Victor grabbed her wrist before she could step away. "You think you're innocent? You're the one who told me to press harder. You wanted her gone as much as I did." She yanked her arm free. "I didn't tell you to kill your pregnant wife." They glared at each other, two predators realizing the trap they'd built together. On the floor, Liana's eyelids fluttered. A faint moan escaped her lips. Victor froze. "She's still alive," he whispered, relief and terror mixing in his voice. "Help me get her upstairs. We'll tell the doctor she tripped, she fainted." Clara hesitated. "You're insane. The moment she wakes up, she'll tell everyone." He looked up sharply, eyes cold again. "Then she won't wake up." The words hung in the air like smoke. Even Victor seemed startled by what he'd said. Clara stepped back, shaking her head. "You're drunk, Victor. You don't mean that." But he did. Somewhere deep down, he'd already crossed that invisible line, the one between fury and evil. He knelt beside Liana, his hands trembling as he pressed a towel against her abdomen. "Liana, can you hear me? Wake up. Come on." Her lips moved, barely audible. "The baby." Victor's throat tightened. "You'll be fine," he lied, his voice breaking. "Just breathe." But she didn't answer. Her head rolled to the side again, her skin ghostly pale. Clara backed away, pulling her phone from her purse. "I'm calling 911. Victor lunged for it. No police, Clara? You think I'm going to prison for this? You think you'll still be sipping champagne while I rot in a cell? She fought him off, screaming, "You're crazy. She needs a hospital." They struggled. The phone flew across the room, shattering against the marble. The sound echoed like a gunshot. Both of them froze, chests heaving, the smell of iron thick in the air. Then came a knock. A timid, uncertain knock. "Mr. Hale?" It was George, the elderly gardener, his voice muffled through the heavy door. "Sir, is everything all right? I thought I heard shouting." Victor's eyes went wide. He wiped his hands on his shirt, streaking it with red. "Go upstairs," he whispered to Clara. "Now." "Victor, go." She obeyed, heels clicking frantically up the staircase. Victor cracked the door open an inch. "Everything's fine, George," he said smoothly, forcing a smile. "Just an accident. Mrs. Hale wasn't feeling well." But George saw it, a smear of blood on Victor's sleeve, the fear behind his eyes, and he knew something was terribly wrong. "Should I call the doctor, sir?" "No," Victor snapped. "Just clean the front steps. Go home after that." George nodded, stepping back, but his mind was already made up. As the door closed, the old man glanced at the security camera mounted above the porch. Its tiny red light was blinking, recording. He whispered to himself, "Hold on, Mrs. Hale. Someone will help you." Inside, Victor looked down at his wife's motionless body and muttered, "God forgive me." But outside, someone already knew the truth. The mansion was silent again, the kind of silence that follows disaster. Victor sat slumped on the couch, a glass of whiskey shaking in his hand. Across from him, Clara paced like a trapped cat, her heels clicking against the marble floor. "We can't just leave her there," she said, voice trembling. "What if she dies?" Victor didn't answer. His face was pale, hollow. The towel pressed against Liana's stomach had already soaked through, crimson blooming through white. She lay still on the floor, her breathing shallow, eyes half open, staring at nothing. "She's not going to die," Victor muttered, though the words rang false. "She's strong. She just needs rest." Clara turned to him sharply. "You don't believe that?" He downed another gulp of whiskey. "You don't understand what's at stake. If this gets out, it's over. Everything. The company, the investors, the board." Clara cut him off. "Then do something, Victor. She's bleeding out." He slammed the glass onto the table. "Don't tell me what to do." Upstairs, lightning flashed through the tall windows, illuminating the storm outside. The rain began to hammer the glass, a violent, relentless rhythm. And down by the garden gate, George the gardener stood in the rain, dialing a number he hadn't called in years. The call connected on the third ring. "Mr. Gabriel Hale?" he asked, his voice trembling. "Sir, it's George. Something's happened. It's about Liana." There was silence on the other end, then Gabriel's low, controlled voice. "What about her?" "She's hurt. Bad. I saw blood, sir. She's not moving." Gabriel's tone sharpened instantly. "Where are you calling from?" "The Hale estate, sir. I think her husband." "Stay where you are," Gabriel interrupted. "Don't let anyone leave the house. I'll handle the rest." Within minutes, 3 phones lit up across New York. Julian Hale, the sharp-minded COO, and Ethan Hale, the youngest and most impulsive brother, received the same message. "She's in danger. Meet me at the estate." Back at the mansion, Victor and Clara argued in hushed, frantic tones. "We should drive her to the hospital," Clara insisted, grabbing her purse. Victor's eyes snapped toward her. "And tell them what? That I kicked my pregnant wife down? That's not happening." "She'll die," he glared at her, jaw tight. Then it's her fault for pushing me this far. Clara froze, staring at him in horror. You're a monster. Maybe, he said coldly, but you're staying with me. Thunder rattled the chandeliers. Somewhere outside, tires screeched on wet pavement. A car door slammed. Victor frowned. Who the hell? The front door burst open. Rain swept in, followed by 3 towering figures in dark coats. Gabriel Hale led the way, his expression carved from steel. Julian followed, phone still in hand, while Ethan's eyes darted toward the blood on the floor. What did you do? Gabriel demanded. His voice was calm, but beneath it simmered something dangerous. Victor took a step back. This isn't what it looks like. Ethan knelt beside Liana, pressing his fingers to her pulse. She's alive, he said. But not for long. He looked up at his brothers. We need to move now. Julian barked an order to George, who had followed them inside. Get the SUV. Back entrance. No questions. Clara tried to slip away, but Gabriel's hand shot out, gripping her wrist. Don't move, he warned. You'll answer for this later. As the brothers lifted Liana's fragile body from the blood-soaked floor, her head rolled weakly against Gabriel's chest. Her lips parted, a whisper barely audible through the storm. The baby, Gabriel's jaw clenched, will save both of you. They carried her out into the rain. Behind them, Victor stood frozen, the realization settling in. The empire he'd tried to steal had just turned against him. Rain slammed against the windshield like sheets of glass. The SUV's tires hissed across the slick Manhattan streets, wipers fighting to keep up. Inside, tension crackled in the air, the kind that made every second feel like an eternity. Gabriel Hale sat in the front passenger seat, jaw locked, eyes fixed on the road ahead. Beside him, Julian drove like a man possessed, one hand gripping the wheel, the other checking his watch every few seconds. In the back seat, Ethan cradled Liana against him, his coat pressed against her bleeding side. Her pulse is weak, Ethan said, voice tight. We have to move faster. Julian swore under his breath. The hospital's 10 minutes out. We'll make it. Gabriel turned slightly, his gaze steady but burning. Don't let her close her eyes. Talk to her. Ethan brushed the wet hair from Liana's face. Hey, Liana, he whispered, forcing his voice to stay calm. Stay with me, okay? You're safe now? Her eyelids fluttered. Who are you? Gabriel glanced back, his expression softening for the first time that night. Friends of your father, he said. He trusted us. Now it's our turn to protect you. Tears welled in her eyes. The baby. You'll both make it, Gabriel said firmly. I promise. Lightning flashed across the sky, illuminating her pale face. The baby's name echoed in her fading consciousness. Noah. She clung to that word, whispering it like a prayer. Ethan felt her body trembling. She's going into shock, he warned. We need pressure on the wound. Julian ripped his tie off and passed it back. Ethan tied it tightly around the towel, pressing against her abdomen. The bleeding slowed, but her breathing didn't steady. In the front seat, Gabriel made a call. Dr. Patel, he said into the phone. We're 5 minutes out. Prepare a trauma team. Obstetrics too. She's pregnant. 2nd trimester. The doctor's voice came through urgent but steady. Understood. We'll have the OR ready. What's her BP? Dropping, Ethan called out. She's barely conscious. Keep her awake, the doctor ordered, and tell her not to move. But Liana couldn't hear anymore. Her vision blurred, her body growing colder by the second. She felt like she was sinking, the hum of the car fading into distant thunder. Her mind drifted. She saw her father smiling in his old study, holding out a hand to her as sunlight streamed through the windows. You're stronger than you think, my girl, his voice echoed faintly. Don't give up. Hale blood protects its own. Liana, Ethan's shout pulled her back. She gasped, coughing weakly. Her hand shot up, gripping his sleeve. Don't let him. Take the company, she whispered. Gabriel leaned back, hearing every word. His expression hardened. He won't, he said quietly. Not after tonight. The SUV screeched into the private hospital's emergency bay. Floodlights cut through the rain as a team of doctors rushed out with stretchers. Vitals dropping fast, Ethan called, jumping out as they pulled Liana from the car. Gabriel followed, his suit soaked but his presence commanding. She's under Hale protection, he said to the attending doctor. Do whatever it takes. Dr. Patel nodded and disappeared through the sliding doors with Liana's stretcher. The doors hissed shut, leaving the brothers standing in the storm, their breaths visible in the cold night air. Julian ran a hand through his soaked hair. What the hell happened in that house? Gabriel's eyes were dark, unblinking. Victor Hale crossed a line that can't be uncrossed. Ethan looked toward the hospital window, where Liana's silhouette was barely visible. She almost died because of him. What are we gonna do? Gabriel turned, rain streaming down his face. We save her. Then, he said, his voice low and deadly, we destroy him. The fluorescent lights above the operating room flickered once before steadying. Machines beeped in rhythm with the storm outside. Liana lay motionless on the surgical table, her face ghostly pale beneath the oxygen mask. Doctors surrounded her, hands moving quickly, voices low but urgent. BP is dropping, a nurse called out. Fetal heartbeat is unstable. Dr. Patel's voice cut through the chaos. Keep her under. We're not losing either of them tonight. Through the glass observation window, Gabriel Hale stood still as stone, his arms folded tightly across his chest. Julian paced behind him, muttering calculations. Timing, blood pressure, surgical odds. Ethan, leaning against the wall, ran a trembling hand through his hair. None of them spoke for a long moment. She shouldn't even be alive, Ethan finally said, his voice rough. He nearly killed her. Gabriel's gaze didn't leave the woman on the table. She's her father's daughter, he said quietly. That man built Hale Industries with us brick by brick. He used to say his girl had more strength in her heart than most men had in their fists. Julian glanced over. If she pulls through this, what then? You think Victor will just walk away? Gabriel's jaw tightened. No, he said. He's going to wish he had. Inside the OR, the monitor let out a long, flat tone. We're losing her. Dr. Patel leaned forward. Push 1 milligram of epinephrine. Now. Ethan's fists clenched. Come on, Liana, breathe. The seconds stretched, heavy and unbearable. Then, a blip, another. The heart monitor began to rise again. She's back, the nurse whispered, fetal heartbeat stabilizing. Gabriel exhaled for the first time in minutes. He turned away from the window, eyes burning with something dangerous. Julian, he said, voice low, I want every file Victor touched pulled by morning. Audits, contracts, offshore accounts, everything. Julian nodded. Already in motion. I'll have our legal team freeze his shares by sunrise. And Clara done? Gabriel asked. Ethan's eyes hardened. She's not going anywhere. I've got one of our security men watching her condo. She slips up once, I'll know. Gabriel nodded, satisfied. Good. But for now, he looked back at the glass at the pale figure lying under the harsh white lights. We protect her. No leaks, no press, not a word until she wakes up. Hours passed. The storm outside began to die, replaced by the quiet hum of morning traffic. Inside the recovery room, Liana lay beneath soft blankets, her breathing even now. Her hand rested lightly on her stomach, where beneath the bandages a heartbeat still fluttered, fragile but alive. Ethan sat beside her, exhaustion etched into his young face. You made it, he murmured. You really made it. The door opened, and Gabriel stepped in, holding 2 cups of black coffee. Doctor says she'll be in and out for a while, he said. She's lost a lot of blood, but the baby's strong. Julian followed, tablet in hand. We've confirmed it. Victor tried transferring her shares 2 hours before the attack. Paperwork forged, Clara's signature on the witness line. Gabriel's expression darkened. Then it's official. This wasn't a fight. It was an execution attempt. Ethan glanced toward Liana, still unconscious. She's going to want justice when she wakes up. She'll have it, Gabriel said coldly. The world's about to see who Victor Hale really is. Outside, the morning sun broke through the clouds, shining through the hospital windows like a quiet promise. Liana stirred, her lips parting just slightly. A single word escaped, barely a whisper. Noah. Ethan smiled faintly. He's safe, he said softly. You both are. Gabriel looked at her, a shadow of resolve crossing his face. Rest, Liana, he whispered. Because when you wake, everything changes. The hospital room was quiet except for the rhythmic beep of the heart monitor and the soft hum of city life filtering through the window. Morning sunlight spilled across the sheets, painting Liana's pale face in gold. For the first time in days, her eyelashes fluttered. Ethan was the first to notice. He'd been sitting by her bedside all night, the shadows of exhaustion dark under his eyes. When she stirred, he leaned forward, his voice gentle but steady. Liana? Can you hear me? Her lips parted, a small pain sound escaping. Where am I? You're safe, he said quickly. You're in Mount Sinai Hospital. You've been through a lot. her brow furrowed as fragments of memory flooded back. The shouting, Victor's rage, the pain, the blood. Her breath hitched, panic flickering in her chest. The baby. Ethan reached out, covering her trembling hand. "He's alive," he said softly. "You both made it." Her eyes filled with tears. Oh, thank God. She turned her face away, sobs shaking her frail body. It was the kind of crying that comes from somewhere deep, the kind that doesn't make sound, just breaks. A knock came at the door. Gabriel entered, his expression composed, though exhaustion hid behind his sharp eyes. Julian followed, tablet in hand, businesslike as ever. "You gave us a scare," Gabriel said, his tone firm but warm. "You've been unconscious for 3 days." Liana blinked, trying to piece it together. 3 days? "Yes," Julian said, scrolling through his screen. "And during those 3 days, Victor's been busy trying to spin a story." She turned her gaze toward them, confusion turning to dread. "What story?" "That you ran away," Gabriel said flatly. "That you were emotional, unstable, that you fell and hurt yourself during an argument." He's painting himself as the worried husband. Liana's jaw trembled. "He kicked me," she whispered. "He tried to kill me and my baby." Gabriel nodded once. "We know, and we have proof." Julian placed the tablet on her lap. A video loaded, grainy footage from the mansion's hidden security feed. The sound came first, her terrified voice, Victor's shouts, the thud of impact. Then the image, him standing over her as she begged for her child's life. Liana's face went white. She covered her mouth, tears spilling silently. "You found this?" Gabriel's voice was quiet but filled with conviction. "Your father had cameras installed years ago, backup feeds stored on a secure server. Victor didn't know they existed." Ethan leaned forward. "This video changes everything. It's not just assault, it's attempted murder. Once we release this, he's finished." But Liana shook her head, wiping her tears. "No, not yet." The brothers exchanged looks. "What do you mean?" Gabriel asked. Her voice was soft, trembling but steady. "If we release it now, he'll claim it's fake. He still controls people inside the company, and the board will rally behind him. I need to face him first, in person." Julian frowned. "You're barely strong enough to sit up." Liana met his gaze, her eyes suddenly fierce. "I wasn't strong enough to stop him before. I won't make that mistake again." The room fell silent. Gabriel's stare lingered on her for a long moment, then he nodded slowly. "All right," he said, "we'll do it your way, but we'll be there, every step of the way." Ethan smiled faintly. "You're tougher than you look." Liana glanced toward the window, the morning light reflecting in her eyes. "No," she said softly, "I'm just done being afraid." Outside, New York moved on, unaware that inside that quiet hospital room, a broken woman had just become the calm before a storm. 1 week later, the city was buzzing with whispers. Victor Hale had appeared on every magazine cover, playing the role of the grieving husband. The headline on Business Ledger read, "Tragic accident strikes the Hale family, pregnant wife in critical condition." His PR team painted him as a heartbroken man, the victim of stress and misunderstanding. He smiled for cameras, gave statements about love and forgiveness, and promised to devote his life to his unborn child's recovery. But the world didn't know the truth, not yet. At Hale Industries headquarters, a sleek skyscraper of glass and steel, the atmosphere was tense. Victor stood in the conference room surrounded by board members, sipping coffee and pretending calm. Clara Dunn sat beside him, flawless in a cream suit, every inch the loyal assistant. "Gentlemen," Victor said smoothly, "we must move forward with the merger. My wife's condition is unfortunate, but business cannot stop for grief." The board murmured their approval. He smiled inwardly. It's done, he thought. No one will dare question me now. But across town, another meeting was taking place. One Victor would never see coming. Inside Gabriel Hale's private office, Liana sat at a long mahogany table. She was pale but composed, a soft scarf hiding the faint bruises on her neck. Her hands rested protectively over her belly as Ethan and Julian stood on either side of her. Gabriel leaned forward, a quiet fire in his eyes. "Are you sure about this?" he asked. "You don't owe the world your pain." Liana's voice was calm, but her words cut like steel. "I owe my child a future free of monsters." Julian placed a folder in front of her. "The moment you walk through those doors, it begins. The media, the shareholders, they'll all see you. You ready for that?" She looked down at her hands, then back up. "I've been invisible long enough." Ethan smiled faintly. "Then let's make some noise." 2 hours later, the elevator doors to Hale Industries slid open. Employees froze mid-conversation, their eyes widening as Liana Moore Hale stepped out, alive, poised, and unbroken. Her heels clicked against the marble floor with every step, a sound that silenced the entire lobby. Whispers spread like wildfire. "She's alive. She's here." When the glass doors of the boardroom opened, Victor's voice stopped mid-sentence. His coffee cup slipped from his hand, shattering on the floor. For a heartbeat, he thought he was seeing a ghost. "Hello, Victor?" Liana said softly, her tone calm, almost gentle. "Miss me?" Clara gasped, color draining from her face. You were supposed to be dead?" Liana finished for her. "You almost got your wish," Victor stammered, struggling to recover his composure. "Liana, this isn't what it looks like. I've been lying," she interrupted. "Yes, I know." Gabriel, Julian, and Ethan entered behind her, their presence filling the room like thunderclouds. Gabriel placed a tablet on the table and pressed play. The video began. Victor's voice, his shouts, the sickening sound of the kick. The room went silent except for the echo of Liana's terrified plea. "Please don't kick me. My baby could die." One of the board members dropped his pen. Clara's hand flew to her mouth. Victor lunged forward. "Turn that off!" Gabriel's voice was ice. "You should have turned yourself in." Security stepped closer. Reporters began flooding the hallway outside, drawn by the breaking news alert that had just gone public. Hale's CEO caught on hidden camera assaulting pregnant wife. Liana looked at Victor one last time. "You destroyed everything good in you," she said softly. "Now watch what I rebuild from your ruins." She turned and walked out, the world's cameras flashing like lightning behind her. Victor's empire began to crumble that very hour. Within 24 hours, Victor Hale's life unraveled. The footage had exploded across every major news network and social platform. Headlines screamed in bold letters, "Hale CEO attacks pregnant wife, hidden camera footage leaked." The video had gone viral within hours, shared millions of times. People replayed the haunting moment when Liana's broken voice pleaded, "Please don't kick me. My baby could die." The world's sympathy shifted instantly. Investors pulled out. Clients terminated contracts. Hale Industries' stock plunged 20 points before the market even closed. In the penthouse office that had once been his throne, Victor sat alone. Reporters crowded the streets below, shouting his name like vultures circling a corpse. The empire he'd spent a decade building was bleeding faster than he could patch it. Clara Dunn stood by the window, arms crossed, trying to look composed. "You should have destroyed that footage," she hissed. He spun on her. "How was I supposed to know it existed? Your job was to control the media," she scoffed. "My job was to make you look like a hero, not clean up your crimes." Victor grabbed her wrist. "Don't you dare turn on me, Clara. I made you." She pulled free, glaring. "You made me watch you turn into something disgusting." Her phone buzzed. A notification flashed. Warrant issued. Victor Hale. Under investigation for attempted murder. She looked at him with a twisted smile. "Looks like you're famous, darling." Victor's face went pale. "They wouldn't dare." "Oh, they dare," she whispered. "You're trending in 30 countries." He stormed to the window, staring at the flashing lights below. "I can fix this. I'll hold a press conference. Say the footage was edited. You think anyone believes you now?" Clara interrupted. "Even your board voted you out this morning. You're finished, Victor." His phone rang. It was his lawyer. The call lasted less than a minute. When it ended, his hands were shaking. "They froze my accounts," he muttered. "All of them." Clara smirked. "Guess your golden parachute just caught fire." He glared at her. "You think you're walking away clean? You signed those documents too." Her confidence faltered. "What are you talking about?" "The forged share transfer," he sneered. "Your name's right there beside mine. When I go down, I'm not going alone." Clara's face drained of color. "You bastard." He smiled, cruel and broken. "Takes one to know one." Before she could respond, a loud knock echoed through the door. "NYPD," a voice shouted. "Open up." Victor froze. For the first time in his life, real fear filled his eyes. Clara backed away, trembling. "Mr. Hale," the officer shouted again. "We have a warrant for your arrest." He turned toward Clara. "You called them." "I didn't have to," she whispered. "The world already did." The door burst open. Officers flooded the office. Victor tried to speak, to bargain, but the words came out slurred and meaningless. They forced him to his knees, handcuffing him as flashbulbs from waiting photographers exploded outside the door. As they dragged him out, Gabriel Hale stood in the hallway, calm and collected, flanked by Julian and Ethan. Victor lifted his head, fury burning through humiliation. "You think this makes you heroes?" he spat. "You think she deserves any of this?" Gabriel stepped closer. "She deserves peace," he said evenly. "Something you'll never know again." Victor was led past them, his empire collapsing behind him. Downstairs, cameras captured every second. The former golden CEO of Hale Industries, handcuffed, pale, and silent. The world watched the mighty fall. And somewhere in a quiet hospital room, Liana turned on the television just in time to see his face flash across the screen. For the first time in months, she smiled. The New York Supreme Court was overflowing. Every reporter in the city had shown up, cameras flashing like lightning as the once untouchable Victor Hale was led in wearing a gray suit and handcuffs. He still tried to hold his head high, but the arrogance that once filled his eyes had drained away, replaced by something colder. Panic. Across the room, seated beside Gabriel Hale, Liana adjusted the shawl over her shoulders. Her face was pale but calm, her hand resting protectively over her stomach. The soft swell beneath the fabric was a reminder. She wasn't just fighting for herself, she was fighting for her child. Ethan sat behind her, jaw tight, eyes fixed on Victor like a hawk watching prey. Julian flipped through documents methodically, preparing to present evidence that would burn Victor's lies to ash. The judge entered, and the room rose. The gavel struck once. Case number 5728. The State of New York versus Victor Hale, the judge announced. Liana's heart pounded, but her gaze never wavered. She had dreamed of this moment, the day she'd look him in the eyes and not feel fear. The prosecution began. "Your Honor, this case is about greed, control, and attempted murder. Mr. Hale tried to coerce his wife into signing away her inheritance. When she refused, he assaulted her while she was 6 months pregnant. Victor's lawyer, a sharp man in a dark suit, stood. Objection. The defense maintains this was an accident, an argument between spouses taken out of context." The judge's tone was dry. "Overruled. Continue." Then came the video. Julian connected the tablet to the court monitor. The grainy footage played for everyone. The shouting, the threats, the sound of the kick. Liana's voice echoed through the room. "Please don't kick me. My baby could die." A gasp rippled through the audience. Some reporters lowered their cameras, too stunned to film. Others scribbled furiously, already crafting the next morning's headline. Liana closed her eyes as the footage played, her hands trembling slightly. Gabriel leaned forward and whispered, "Breathe, you're winning this." When it ended, silence filled the courtroom, heavy, suffocating, undeniable. The prosecutor turned to the jury. "You heard her. You saw him. This wasn't an accident. This was a man who thought his wife was property and his unborn child collateral." Victor slammed his hand against the table. "She's lying. That footage is edited." The judge's gavel cracked through the air. "Mr. Hale, you'll remain silent or be removed." But Victor couldn't stop himself. "She wanted to ruin me. She set me up." Liana finally spoke. Her voice was steady, quiet, but carrying across the courtroom with a force that silenced even the reporters. "You ruined yourself, Victor. You thought love was ownership. You thought fear could buy loyalty. But you can't control someone who's already lost everything." Her words hung in the air. Even the judge seemed to hesitate before continuing. The defense tried to recover, but it was hopeless. Every piece of evidence, the forged documents, the text messages between Victor and Clara, the testimony from George the gardener, painted a picture darker than greed. It was evil dressed in a designer suit. When the closing arguments ended, the jury disappeared into deliberation. They were gone for less than 2 hours. The foreman stood, hands shaking as he read the verdict. "We find the defendant, Victor Hale, guilty on all counts." A collective gasp erupted. Liana exhaled, tears spilling silently down her cheeks. Victor's face twisted with rage. "You think this is over?" he spat. "You'll regret this, Liana." The bailiff restrained him as he shouted, dragging him away in chains. Liana didn't flinch. She stood slowly, turning toward the brothers who had saved her life. "It's over," Ethan said softly. "No," she whispered, gazing at the empty space where Victor had stood. "It's just beginning." Because now, she wasn't just the victim. She was the woman who survived, and she had an empire to reclaim. The morning after the verdict, the city woke to a new headline. Victor Hale sentenced. wife he tried to kill to inherit his empire. For the first time in months, sunlight streamed through the windows of Hale Industries without casting a shadow of fear. The company that had once belonged to corruption was now in the hands of the woman who had bled for it. Liana stepped out of the black sedan parked in front of the glass tower. Cameras flashed like fireworks. Reporters shouted questions, but she didn't stop. Her heels clicked against the marble floor as she entered the lobby. The same lobby where she had once walked behind Victor, silent and unseen. Now everyone moved aside for her. Employees whispered her name as she passed. That's her, the real Mrs. Hale. Gabriel, Julian, and Ethan were waiting for her in the boardroom. It was the same room where Victor had once humiliated her, the same room where his empire had begun to fall. Today, it was hers. "You don't have to do this today," Gabriel said gently. "We can handle the transition paperwork." Liana shook her head. "I need to face this place. I need to see what he built on my father's ashes." Julian slid a folder toward her. "By law and by board approval, Hale Industries' controlling interest now belongs to you. 31% in total, more than enough to lead." Liana looked down at the signature line. Her hands didn't shake this time. She picked up the pen and signed her name with calm precision. Ethan grinned. "That's it. You're officially the majority shareholder. The company's yours." She looked around the table. "No," she said softly. "It's not mine. It's my father's legacy, and it's for my son." Her words carried a quiet strength that filled the room. Even Gabriel, stoic as ever, allowed a small nod of respect. "Then let's make sure no one ever stains that legacy again." Julian tapped on his tablet, pulling up the company's financials. "First order of business. We're cutting all ties to Victor's shell accounts. Every dirty deal dies today." Ethan added, "And Clara done?" Liana's eyes hardened. "Let the law handle her. I don't need revenge. I already won." The brothers exchanged a glance, proud, protective. Hours later, Liana walked through the top floor of the building alone. Victor's old office was still there, untouched. His nameplate gleamed on the door, mocking her. She pushed it open. The smell of his cologne lingered, faint but sharp. For a moment, her chest tightened, the ghosts of every bruise, every scream echoing in the air. But then she stepped to his desk, opened the drawer, and pulled out the framed photo of their wedding day. Her younger self smiled from behind glass, naive and radiant. "I forgive you," she whispered. Then she set the frame face down and walked out, closing the door for the last time. Downstairs, employees gathered in the lobby to watch her exit. Someone began clapping, soft at first, then louder, until the entire floor erupted in applause. She stopped at the glass doors, turning to face them. "I don't want you to remember me as the woman who was hurt," she said, voice clear and strong. "Remember me as the woman who stood back up. Hale Industries will no longer be built on fear. It will be built on integrity, compassion, and strength." Gabriel joined her at her side. "Welcome home, Mrs. Hale." Outside, the cameras flashed again, but this time she didn't shy away. She smiled, not for the headlines, not for revenge, but for the life she had reclaimed. As she placed a hand on her belly, she whispered, "We did it, Noah. We made it home." And somewhere, far behind prison bars, Victor Hale saw that same smile on the evening news, and finally understood what true power looked like. For a few brief weeks, peace felt possible. Liana began to breathe again, slow, careful breaths that no longer hurt. She spent her mornings at the office, rebuilding her father's company, and her evenings in quiet anticipation, feeling Noah move inside her belly. The brothers checked in daily, protective and steady, like the guardians her father had promised she would one day have. But power never returns without a price. The first sign came quietly. One morning, Julian entered her office, his expression tight. "We received a message," he said, setting his tablet down. "Someone leaked your hospital records to the press." Liana froze. "What?" "It's all over social media," Julian continued. "They're questioning the authenticity of the footage, calling it a setup. Someone's funding fake witnesses to claim you bribed them." Ethan stormed in, slamming the door. "Clara Dunn," he said coldly. "She's out on bail. Her attorney's building a narrative that Victor was framed, that you planned the attack for sympathy." Liana's stomach twisted. "She's lying." Gabriel appeared in the doorway, his face carved from steel. "Of course she's lying. But this isn't just reputation damage. It's psychological warfare." Liana took a slow breath. Then we fight back. Julian frowned. You just reclaimed your position. The last thing you need is another scandal. I didn't come this far to hide, she said firmly. They tried to bury me once. I'm still here. Gabriel gave a small nod of approval. Then we expose her, properly, legally. Later that day, Ethan visited Clara's penthouse disguised as a courier. She opened the door expecting flowers. Instead, she found the youngest Hale brother holding an envelope. Consider this notice, Ethan said, voice calm but cold. You're being sued for defamation and conspiracy. Liana doesn't need to ruin you. The truth will do that for her. Clara's smirk faltered. You can't intimidate me. Victor will appeal. He'll be free soon. Ethan tilted his head. You really think a man who tried to kill his pregnant wife is walking out of prison? You're dumber than he thought. He turned to leave, but Clara's voice stopped him. You think she's safe? You think power like that doesn't create enemies? Ethan glanced back. Maybe, but none like you. Back at Hale Industries, Liana stood before the mirror in her father's old office, adjusting her jacket. She looked like the woman she'd once imagined becoming, composed, powerful, untouchable. But inside, her heart raced. Every shadow felt heavier now. Every whispered rumor, every headline questioning her truth. It all hurt more than she wanted to admit. That night, she returned home alone for the first time since the trial. The mansion was quiet, the lights dim. She walked through the halls slowly, past the place where her blood had once stained the marble. It had been cleaned, polished, restored, but she still saw it. In the nursery, she paused by the crib, running her fingers along the pale blue blanket. We're okay, she whispered to Noah. They can't hurt us anymore. A faint sound made her turn, the click of a door downstairs. Her breath caught. Gabriel? She called softly. No answer. Her hand reached instinctively for her phone. But before she could dial, she saw it. An envelope slipped under the door. She bent to pick it up. No return address. Just 2 words written in black ink. You're next. Her heart pounded. She tore it open. Inside was a single photo, her and the brothers, leaving the courthouse the day of Victor's sentencing. On the back, scrawled in Victor's handwriting, were 4 chilling words. I don't forgive you. Liana sank into the nearest chair, gripping the photo with trembling hands. She looked toward the crib, whispering, Not again. I won't let him. Somewhere deep inside, the old fear stirred. But this time, so did something stronger. This time, she would fight back first. The next morning began with panic. Ethan was the first to arrive at Liana's estate after her late-night call. He burst through the door with Gabriel close behind. She was sitting in the living room, pale but composed, the mysterious envelope lying on the table. Gabriel picked it up carefully, reading the words aloud. You're next. Julian arrived moments later, holding a laptop. Security footage shows no forced entry, he said. Whoever left this knew the house layout and how to avoid the cameras. Liana's fingers tightened around her coffee mug. He's still locked up. There's no way Victor could have. Gabriel cut her off. People like him don't need freedom to cause damage. They just need money and anger. Ethan started pacing. He has contacts. Maybe someone on the inside helped him. Julian set the laptop on the table and opened a file. You need to see this. At 2:43 a.m., someone accessed a private account connected to Victor's offshore holdings. A transfer, $50,000, wired to a name we haven't seen before. Who? Gabriel asked. Julian turned the screen toward them. Mark Delano, ex-security chief at Hale Industries, fired 6 months ago for selling company data. Liana's breath caught. He used to work for Victor. He knows this house. Ethan's voice darkened. Then he's the one who broke in. Gabriel leaned forward, his tone low but commanding. Julian, contact internal security. I want Delano found before the day ends. Already on it, Julian said, typing rapidly. Liana stood slowly, one hand instinctively resting on her stomach. I won't hide again, she said. If Victor wants to play this game, then I'll make sure he loses everything, including his silence. Gabriel studied her face. That's not just courage, Liana. That's war. She met his gaze. Then teach me how to fight it. Later that afternoon, she walked into the Hale boardroom once more, not as a victim, but as the acting CEO. The staff stared in silent awe as she entered, her heels striking against the polished marble. She opened the meeting with a calm voice that carried authority. Effective immediately, she announced. We're creating a new division, the Hale Foundation. It will fund shelters and legal aid for women who survived violence and coercion. Every dollar Victor used to destroy people will now rebuild lives." The room erupted in applause. Gabriel watched her from across the table, pride flickering in his eyes. But outside those glass walls, danger crept closer. That night, Julian called with an update. "We traced Delano's phone. He left the city 30 minutes ago, heading north. But before that, he made another call." "To who?" Gabriel demanded. Julian hesitated. "To the prison holding Victor Hale." The line went quiet. "Set up surveillance on both," Gabriel ordered. "No one gets near her without clearance." At the mansion, Liana tried to rest. The rain tapped gently on the windows, the same rhythm from the night she nearly died. She stood by the crib, whispering softly to her unborn son. "Your father can't touch us anymore. We have people now. We have power." But as she turned to leave, something glinted at the window. A red laser dot moved slowly across the glass, stopping right on her chest. Her blood ran cold. She dove to the floor just as the window shattered, a single silent shot cracking through the night. Security alarms blared. Ethan, stationed outside, burst into the room within seconds, gun drawn. "Liana, I'm fine," she gasped, shaking. "The baby," Gabriel's voice came through his earpiece. "Sniper on the ridge, get her out now." Ethan grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the hallway. Behind them, shards of glass glimmered like frozen lightning, and as they escaped through the back door, Liana realized something terrifying. Victor's war wasn't over, it had just begun. The mansion was chaos. Sirens wailed in the distance as armed security swarmed the grounds. Rain poured from the sky, turning the front lawn into a mirror of shattered glass and flashing lights. Ethan held Liana close as he guided her down the hallway, his arms steady around her shoulders. She trembled but refused to cry. "I'm fine," she whispered, though her voice shook. "Is he gone?" Gabriel's voice crackled over Ethan's earpiece. "Sniper's still out there? Southeast Ridge, we've got men closing in." Julian's voice followed. "I'm pulling satellite footage. There's a getaway vehicle parked 300 yards out. They planned this." Liana's mind spun. "He's still in prison," she said. "He couldn't have ordered this himself." Gabriel's tone was sharp. "Someone's doing it for him. Victor's got allies we haven't found yet." Ethan led her into the underground safe room, reinforced walls, bulletproof glass, and a secured communication line. "You stay here until we clear the perimeter," he ordered. Liana shook her head. "No, I'm not hiding again. He keeps trying to scare me into silence. I won't give him that satisfaction." "Liana," Ethan said firmly, "you're carrying a child. This isn't bravery anymore. It's survival." Before she could argue, Gabriel entered the safe room, his suit soaked from the rain. "He's gone," he said. "Our team found the rifle and tire tracks. Whoever it was, they're professionals. No fingerprints." Julian arrived moments later, his tablet glowing in the dim light. "I traced the payment from Victor's offshore account. It was funneled through 3 shell corporations before ending up in a private fund registered to Clara Dunn." Liana's blood ran cold. "Clara?" Gabriel's voice hardened. "She's the one coordinating this. Victor's mouthpiece on the outside." Ethan clenched his jaw. "Then let's end this tonight." "No," Gabriel said quickly. "We do it smart. If we strike without proof, she'll vanish, and she'll take whatever's left of Victor's money with her." Liana stared at them all, the weight of the night pressing on her chest. "Then we expose her," she said, "the same way we exposed him." Julian frowned. "She's careful. She doesn't text, doesn't email. She's too paranoid to make the same mistake twice." Liana looked up slowly, her eyes burning with quiet resolve. "Then I'll make her come to me." The room went silent. Ethan stared at her. "You're not suggesting—" "Yes," Liana interrupted. "She wants me dead, so I'll give her what she wants, a meeting." Gabriel's brow furrowed. "It's too dangerous." "She won't expect me to face her," Liana said. "That's why it'll work." Julian hesitated, then nodded slowly. "If we control the environment, hidden surveillance, security in place, it might force her to reveal who's funding her." Gabriel rubbed his temples. "You're playing with fire, Liana." She met his gaze without flinching. "Fire's the only thing that keeps snakes away." Hours later, plans were already in motion. They arranged a public charity event at the Hale Foundation headquarters, a perfect stage. Word would spread fast, and Clara wouldn't be able to resist attending, pretending innocence. That night, while security teams reinforced every window, Liana stood in her room, staring out at the rain. Her reflection in the glass looked like someone she'd barely recognized, stronger, colder, unafraid. Ethan entered quietly. "You should rest," he said. She shook her head. "Resting's for people who feel safe." He placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You're not alone in this, Liana." Her voice softened. "I know, but I need to be ready, because if Clara shows up tomorrow, this ends, one way or another." Outside, thunder rolled across the sky. Not a warning this time, but a promise. The Hale Foundation's charity gala glimmered with elegance, a perfect illusion of peace hiding the storm beneath. Crystal chandeliers cast golden light across a sea of silk gowns and designer suits. The city's elite smiled for cameras, clinking champagne glasses under the banner that read, "Hope for tomorrow." But tonight, hope had a different meaning. Tonight, it was bait. At the top of the staircase, Liana Hale stood radiant in a navy satin gown, her hair swept back, her presence commanding. No one could tell that beneath the calm smile, her pulse raced. Every camera flash felt like lightning, every stranger's glance like a potential threat. Gabriel watched from across the room, earpiece in place. "All exits covered," he murmured quietly. "Security teams ready." Julian adjusted his cufflink, his tablet tucked under his arm, monitoring live feeds from hidden cameras placed throughout the venue. If Clara's coming, she'll show within the hour. Her accounts went active again this morning. Ethan, ever the restless one, paced near the bar, eyes scanning the crowd. "I don't like her being this exposed," he muttered. Gabriel's voice came back through the line. "Trust her. This is her night." Liana descended the stairs gracefully, greeting guests, shaking hands, smiling for photos. But her mind was focused on one thing, Clara Dunn. And right on cue, she appeared. Clara entered through the grand doors like a movie star who'd been waiting for her spotlight, dressed in white, bold, uninvited. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The reporters turned, flashes erupting again. "Clara Dunn," one whispered. "Wasn't she Victor Hale's assistant?" Clara smiled sweetly at the whispers and walked straight toward Liana, her heels echoing like the click of a clock counting down. "Liana," she purred. "You look, well, I didn't think you'd have the nerve to show your face after all the lies you told." Liana turned to face her, her smile unwavering. "You should be careful, Clara. The last woman who underestimated me ended up in handcuffs." Clara's eyes flashed. "You think this is over? Victor's appeal hearing is next week. Once he's out, you'll be back where you belong, broken and forgotten." Liana's calm voice cut through the music like glass. "You mean where you belong, in prison?" Clara laughed. "You don't have proof." Gabriel's voice came through Liana's earpiece. "Now, Liana, play the card." Liana's eyes didn't leave Clara's. She reached for the microphone on the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced, her tone polite yet sharp. "Before we continue, I'd like to thank a special guest who's made tonight unforgettable, Miss Clara Dunn." The crowd turned, murmuring. Clara froze. "What are you doing?" Liana smiled. "Something I should have done months ago." She gestured toward the large projector screen behind her. "Let's talk about the truth." The lights dimmed. A video began playing, footage from Clara's recent meetings, secretly recorded by Hale security teams. There she was, clear as day, transferring files, wiring funds, and meeting with the same ex-security officer who'd been paid to target Liana. Gasps filled the room. Clara's composure shattered. "That's not real," she shouted. Julian appeared beside the stage, holding up a flash drive. "It's very real. Pulled from your own encrypted laptop, Miss Dunn. You should have changed your passwords." Ethan and two security officers stepped forward as Clara backed away, panic rising. "You can't arrest me. You can't." But the crowd had already parted, revealing NYPD detectives at the door. "Clara Dunn," one officer said, "you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder and obstruction of justice." Flashes erupted again, reporters shouting over one another. Clara screamed as she was handcuffed, mascara streaking down her face. Liana watched silently, her hand resting over her belly. Gabriel approached, his expression one of quiet pride. "It's done," he said. She nodded slowly, voice soft but steady. "No," she whispered, eyes still on Clara being led away. "It's justice." The orchestra resumed, the music swelling again, as the cameras captured the image of a woman reborn from ruin, the woman her enemies could no longer break. The morning after the gala felt like the first real sunrise in months. The air in Manhattan was crisp, the city alive with headlines celebrating Liana Hale's victory. News outlets buzzed with footage of Clara Dunn being escorted away in handcuffs. Words like justice, redemption, and power dominated every article. Inside her penthouse office at Hale Industries, Liana watched the city from her window, one hand resting on her belly, the other holding a cup of tea. For the first time since her father's death, she felt a fragile peace. Ethan entered first, a playful grin softening his features. "You made history last night," he said. "Half of New York wants to write books about you. The other half wants to work for you." Julian followed, his usual seriousness tempered by pride. "Clara's confession is already being processed. She named Victor as the one who planned the attacks from prison. Every transaction leads back to him." Liana nodded slowly. "Then it's finally over." But Gabriel, leaning against the doorframe, didn't smile. His eyes were dark, unreadable. "No, Liana, it's not." She turned toward him, confused. "What do you mean?" He stepped forward and placed an envelope on her desk. Thick paper, the return address stamped with the seal of Rikers Island. "It arrived this morning," he said quietly, "from Victor." The room went still. Liana stared at it, her fingers twitching but not moving. Julian frowned. "It's probably more threats. We can have it analyzed." But Liana shook her head. "No, I need to read it." She slid her finger under the seal and unfolded the paper. The handwriting was unmistakable, sharp, controlled, almost elegant. The words, however, bled with venom. "Liana, you think victory is yours. You think you've destroyed me, but you've never understood what true power is. I built my empire from nothing, and you're still living off your father's ghost. Enjoy your moment, because soon you'll see what I left behind. You'll realize I've already won." Her breath caught. The letter ended with one final line, written larger than the rest. "Look closer at what you inherited." Julian read over her shoulder, his expression tightening. "It's a bluff. He's trying to make you paranoid." But Gabriel shook his head. "Maybe not." "What are you talking about?" Ethan asked. Gabriel looked at Liana. "I've been reviewing your father's corporate files. There's something strange in the old archives. Sealed records from 15 years ago. Restricted access, even to board members." Julian frowned. "We thought those were just personal trust accounts." "They're not," Gabriel said. "They're hidden subsidiaries. One of them," he paused, choosing his words carefully, "was registered under Victor's name years before your father even passed away." Liana's pulse quickened. "That's impossible. My father didn't even know him then." "Or maybe he did," Gabriel replied. "Maybe Victor's connection to your family started long before you ever met him." Ethan stepped closer. "You're saying your dad might have known what kind of man Victor was?" Liana shook her head, disbelief washing over her. "No. My father was a good man. He would never—" But the thought wouldn't leave her. Her father's cryptic letter, the one she had found months ago, echoed in her mind. "Power can destroy, but it can also protect. Trust the brothers." Julian broke the silence. "If Victor's name is in those files, then this isn't just a personal feud. It's a legacy war." Liana sank into her chair, the paper trembling in her hands. All this time, he wasn't just after the company. He was finishing something that started before me. Gabriel placed a hand on her shoulder. "Then we find out what your father was hiding. Whatever it is, it's the key to ending this once and for all." Liana looked down at the letter again, her heartbeat steadying. The fear that had once ruled her now hardened into resolve. "Then let's open every door he tried to close," she said quietly, "even if it means finding out the truth about my father." Outside the window, the city glowed, bright, cold, unknowing. And deep inside Rikers Island, Victor Hale smiled at a newspaper headline and whispered, "Checkmate." 2 days later, the Hale Industries tower felt heavier than ever. The letter from Victor sat in a glass evidence sleeve on Liana's desk, mocking her with its single, poisonous sentence. "Look closer at what you inherited." Gabriel, Julian, and Ethan gathered in the executive suite. The tension between them was thick, the kind that only came before uncovering something that shouldn't exist. Julian was typing furiously on his tablet. "I've tracked the old subsidiary files Victor mentioned. They're not in our main archives. They're locked in an off-site data vault your father built 20 years ago." "Where?" Gabriel asked. Julian looked up. "Upstate, in the old Hale research facility. It's been abandoned since your father's death." Liana's eyes narrowed. "My father told me that place was destroyed in a fire." Julian shook his head. The fire was contained to one lab. The rest of the building still stands, sealed, powered, and under silent surveillance. Ethan leaned against the wall. So what's been sitting there all these years? Gabriel's voice was low. Whatever Victor's talking about. Liana stood. Then we go tonight. Liana, Gabriel began, but she cut him off. He's playing games. I won't let Victor control me from prison. If my father hid something, I need to see it. By sunset, they were on the road. Liana in the back seat of Gabriel's SUV, her reflection flickering in the window as the city lights disappeared behind them. Rain drizzled steadily, painting the windshield in silver streaks. The old Hale research facility sat at the edge of a forest, surrounded by iron gates and silence. The once grand building was now weathered by time. Ivy crawling up the concrete walls, broken windows glinting faintly under the moonlight. Julian scanned his badge against the rusted gate. "Access still works," he muttered. "Your father's encryption codes are ancient but intact." They entered the main hall. Cold air, dust, and the faint hum of backup generators still running after all these years. Liana followed the flicker of their flashlights through the dark corridors until they reached a steel door labeled Archives, Secure Level. Julian typed a code into the keypad, but the screen flashed red. "Locked. This one's biometric." Gabriel turned to Liana. "Try your handprint. You share your father's DNA. It might still recognize you." Her hand trembled slightly as she pressed her palm against the scanner. For a tense moment, nothing happened. Then, a click. The door slid open. Inside, the room was immaculate. Rows of metal cabinets, servers humming quietly, and one glass case in the center holding a single black binder labeled Project Genesis. Ethan exhaled. "That looks important." Liana approached slowly, her heart pounding. She opened the binder and froze. Inside were old photos of her father shaking hands with a younger Victor Hale. Documents outlined secret transfers of technology patents, medical research data, and offshore accounts linked to both men's signatures. Julian's voice broke the silence. "This isn't just business. They were partners." Liana's eyes widened. "No, my father would never," but Gabriel's expression said otherwise. "This file proves it. Your father brought Victor into the company before you even met him. He groomed him as a successor." Liana's voice cracked. "Why would he do that?" Ethan flipped through another folder. "Because of this." He pulled out a birth certificate, faded, stamped confidential. He hesitated, then handed it to her. Liana stared at it, her breath catching. "No." The name on the document made her knees weaken. Victor Hale, listed as Richard Moore's biological son. Her father's son, her half-brother. The world tilted. Gabriel reached for her, but she stepped back, shaking her head. "He wasn't just after my inheritance," she whispered. "He thought it was his." Ethan swore under his breath. "This changes everything." Julian looked grim. "If the press finds out, they'll say you stole the company from him." Liana clutched the paper, her voice trembling, yet resolute. "Then we don't let the world find out. Not until I know why my father kept this secret." Gabriel met her gaze, calm but fierce. "Whatever the reason, you're not facing it alone." Liana looked down at the birth certificate once more, the edges trembling in her hand. "He's my brother," she whispered, "and he tried to kill me." Outside, thunder cracked across the forest. Inside, history had just rewritten itself. The discovery shattered Liana's world. For hours, she sat in silence inside the old Hale research facility, the dim lights flickering over the open binder marked Project Genesis. The documents lay scattered across the table, proof that Victor wasn't just her husband. He was her half-brother, her father's secret son. The rain outside pounded against the glass, echoing her heartbeat. Gabriel stood near the doorway, arms crossed, watching her carefully. Julian scrolled through files on his tablet, confirming what none of them wanted to say aloud. Ethan paced, his anger simmering just beneath the surface. Finally, Liana spoke. Her voice was barely a whisper. "My father lied to me my entire life." Gabriel stepped closer. "He was trying to protect you." "By marrying me to his son?" she snapped, tears filling her eyes. "By letting me fall in love with my own blood?" No one answered. The silence said enough. Julian broke it gently. "We don't know if he knew Victor's intentions. Maybe Victor manipulated him too." Liana shook her head. "No, the files say they worked together on genetic inheritance research. My father must have known. He must have seen what Victor was capable of." Ethan slammed his fist against a cabinet. That bastard played all of us, from the grave and behind bars. Gabriel's voice stayed calm, but there was steel in it. Then we finish what your father started, but this time the right way. We expose the truth, not to the world, but to the board, to the family that deserves to know. Liana took a deep breath. I'm not ready to destroy my father's name, not yet. If the world finds out Victor is his son, everything my father built will collapse. Hale Industries will die with it. Gabriel nodded slowly. Then we keep it buried, but you have to face him one last time, in prison. Her eyes widened. It's the only way, he said. He won't stop unless he knows you know. He needs to see that you're not afraid anymore. Liana stared at the binder, at the proof of every lie that had shaped her life, and finally nodded. Then let's end this. The next morning, Rikers Island loomed like a fortress of gray steel and regret. The guards escorted Liana through long corridors that smelled of bleach and concrete. Gabriel waited in the car outside, his phone ready in case anything went wrong. When the door to the visitation room opened, Victor was already there. Older, thinner, but still radiating that same cruel confidence. He smiled when he saw her. Liana, you look stronger. I knew prison would inspire you. She sat across from him, her gaze cold. I read the files. His smirk faltered slightly. So you finally know. You're my father's son, she said flatly. Victor leaned back, chains clinking softly. Half-brother. Sounds poetic, doesn't it? The heir and the mistake. He gave you everything, and me nothing, so I took what should have been mine. You tried to kill me, she whispered. I tried to erase a lie, he said calmly. You're just the reflection he wanted, perfect, pure, untouched by his sins. But you were built on them, just like me. Liana leaned forward, her voice trembling with fury. No, Victor. I was built on love. You were built on hate, and that's why you lost. He laughed, low and bitter. You think this ends with me in here? You think truth can stay buried? It can, she said softly. Because the only person who could prove it is already dead. Victor's smile faded. You wouldn't. She stood. You destroyed yourself, Victor. I'm just making sure you stay gone. The guard opened the door behind her. She turned one last time. You said I'd never understand power, she said. You were right, because real power isn't control, it's freedom. As the door closed, Victor's laughter echoed through the steel corridor, hollow, defeated, fading into nothing. Outside, the sky broke open, sunlight spilling across the prison gates. Gabriel was waiting by the car. Is it done? He asked. Liana looked toward the horizon, her voice steady. It's over. She touched her belly gently. And now Noah's future begins. For the first time, she didn't look back. So that's how our story ends, or maybe how it truly begins. You're still here, aren't you? If you've stayed with me until now, it means something in this story touched your heart. Maybe a whisper of strength, or a reminder that even from pain, we can rise again. Liana's journey wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming herself, about learning that real power isn't control. It's freedom. Life will break you sometimes. People will betray you, and the world will feel unfair. But as the Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, we cannot choose our external circumstances, but we can always choose how we respond to them. That's the lesson here. You are never truly defeated unless you stop believing in your worth. Healing isn't loud, it's quiet, patient, and brave. Like Liana, you can turn your pain into purpose, your scars into strength. So if this story moved you even a little, give it a like, share it with someone who might need a reminder to keep going, and don't forget to subscribe, because more stories like this are waiting, stories about resilience, redemption, and the power of never giving up.